Response video to the Modern Mystic from Extensive Notes. Anyway, don't, Jesus, I didn't like the video much. He basically says in the end, he doesn't see a crisis, but there is a crisis of capitalism. These are his quotable words from here. It just doesn't make any sense. There is no crisis if there's no crisis. There can't be a crisis of capitalism if you're not going to concede the crisis can ever mean anything. And his argument is if there is going to be a crisis, it'll last 15 minutes and then it'll be over. Pretty much, because you can't destroy the wealth that's been created. It's all permanent digits in the permanent system, and they can't go anywhere, and they're all real, and they all mean something. We haven't oversold the value of the future at all. I mean, I'm basically arguing that, yes, we've mortgaged everything we own, and now we've mortgaged everything we will own in the future. And we've mortgaged it preposterously. We've said we have IOUs for labor that can never be produced, for productivity that can never be produced, and that those IOUs have to be erased. There's too many claims on too little pie. That's a crisis. So, well, anyway. All right, so it starts off with him recontextualizing his use of the 10% of the people end up in the top 1%. He's using it for the purpose to demonstrate that people think they're closer to being rich than they really are, and therefore they don't want to be anti-rich because they think they're going to be rich. So that was the purpose of it from his perspective. And fine. He talks as if I don't understand that the mindset of the human race has migrated to nihilistic, selfish country. Yeah, it has. I've noticed it my whole fucking life. I lived through it. Okay, I lived in a time where, labor unions were at their peak strength. Where the middle class was growing, suburbs were being built, all of that stuff. So I lived those times. Okay, so I lived pre-Reagan, and I saw the difference. I saw it all happen right in front of my eyes. So, the idea that debt was almost a non-existent term. There was no crisis of national debt, and it became a crisis. So anyway, you used to have a bank account that actually paid you interest. Like you could have $1,000 in the bank, and you actually could make, 50 or 60 bucks a year in interest. But anyway. There was inflation, there was all these other things, but, salaries kept up with that, and it wasn't that big a horror. It's, a lot of horror in terms of the rhetoric and the talk in the papers, but, they always have to talk about something. So anyway, that's his agenda. He says, I have some sort of agenda where I'm too stupid to figure out that other people have some contrary agenda. I think I've made it obvious in all of the fact that I'm even making videos that I know they have another agenda, and I'm trying to explain why their agenda is stupid. And I'm going to continue to do that quite reasonably. That seems to be a rational response to the problem. Yes, if I could press a button and just blow them all up, I would, but I don't have any such button, so I have to negotiate with the assholes, and that's what I'm going to attempt to do. But I'm perfectly aware of this shift in mindset. But he just makes these overt statements. They will never, 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 never. And you're just saying, well, what? So FDR could never, ever get elected ever again in the history of humankind? If the human race was to live another 1,000,000 years, somebody like FDR could never, ever, ever get elected again? Only Ronald Reagan's could get elected forever? It's just a meaningless argument to make. Obviously, nothing will change if nobody asks for change. If no one talks about change, then we won't have change. Yeah, that's true. And as long as people are fooled by fake change, Obama's, Ronald Reagan in blackface, then they're not going to get change either if they're fooled. But you've got to have the conversation. So I don't know what purpose I'm supposed to put this nonsense to. Of course, I know I'm arguing from a minority position. I am perfectly aware of that. But how does that change anything? No, it doesn't. Alright, I need to know this. People dream of being, and I'm perfectly aware that people have all kinds of preposterous and idiotic dreams, and that's the whole point of my videos in substance, is talking about how pointless and idiotic most of your dreams are. That you're just caught up in a fucking wheel-running psychology, and you can wheel run in a stupid manner, or you can at least wheel run somewhere towards human progress. You can be a benefactor to sentient life on Earth, or you can be a blight on it. Wow, gee, how challenging a philosophy. Anyway, people are not going to vote for. See, he just says that, oh yeah, you're never going to change their minds. They're rigid. They're never going to ever be able to, because they've got the truth now. Ayn Rand was right. That's all I was saying. So yeah, Reagan was right. FDR was wrong. That's why it'll never change back. It's because, yeah, obviously the right guy won. No, I don't think there's any evidence of that, any reason to believe that. So he's just basically saying there'll be no revolution. It might be reasonable, but you know, you'll be shocked. I'd be shocked to find out that people have idiotic dreams. No, I'm not shocked. Alright, so the black and white subject, he really got all wrong, I think. I mean, I think he's just factually wrong. And I don't think he understood the point of the metaphor, the point of the... Which basically, the argument I could make is that all the boats haven't been floated. And that what's happened is the money to make the rich richer came directly out of the middle class and basically wiped out a significant number of the middle class. And so the only thing really left are the poor, who you can't make any poorer. There's a point where you just got to pay them welfare if you're not going to pay them wages. So you can't make them any poorer, pretty much, you know, without the blight of cleaning up their dead bodies or something, or having them murder you. You know, so you got to pay them something just to give them a TV to watch so they won't kill you. So they're as poor as they can be. And the only thing that they could extract this extra wealth from was the relative position of the middle class. And so relative to the rich, the middle class have lost their position. And certainly in terms of the amount of debt they're carrying, by any descriptor, you know, how much equity they have in a home they're buying, or all of those descriptions, you could say the middle class is substantially poorer than it was in 1975. By at least a half. Other estimates are even greater in terms of real wealth, because of the amount of debt they carry now that they didn't carry then. Back then they only carried primarily mortgage debt, and the mortgage debt was a small percentage of the equity of the things they bought. They usually put pretty substantial down payments in the old days, so they had real equity in their homes, where they have no equity in the homes now. So these are huge differences. For you to just glibly sit there and tell me it's all gray, it's okay, there's no graying out, there's no contrast problem. When Piketty talks about it, all these other people are starting to talk about it. I mean, there's a huge contrast problem. It is all turning black and white, and I don't think you didn't seem very willing to go into that subject. But I mean, it's a pretty substantial difference in our opinions. And you basically just said, trust me, or I'm right and you know it. You didn't say anything about why I should perceive that there is a thriving middle class in the world. There isn't. And in most of these countries, there's none at all. I mean, there's less of it in Russia, there's less of it in Mexico. You can go all around the world and you're going to find less of it, not more of it. So I don't even know how you can... I don't really know how you can even say that stuff without some kind of thing going off in your head saying, wait a minute, how can I claim it's graying when it's in fact not graying, it's whiting. It's whiting out. I mean, all the statistics say so. Alright, so then he said something like, do I like any video? So I didn't really say I didn't like the guy's video, I just said it was, it was a long fucking 2 hours or whatever. And he really didn't say anything. I mean, he didn't point any of this stuff, and a lot of it is just stuff you could by inference say, well, it must be true because of other statistics. So I'm just saying I didn't get much out of it. That's all I said, right? I said I didn't get much out of it. And this whole power thing, he didn't even go into depth about any kind of psychology of the rich or the psychology of their spawn, what it's like to grow up not knowing what other human beings are, to grow up thinking they're bugs, to have no, even if you went into some sort of, like in the plantation days, people just didn't think about it. I mean, they saw a sweating Negro, and they just didn't even think about, oh, gee, it would really suck to have that, to live that life. That's awful burdensome. I mean, we can do it when we look at a donkey. If I overload a donkey, right, people will get it. They'll say, oh, the poor little donkey, especially I give the donkey a cute name, Bingo, and I put a big burden on it. People will say, gee, that's terrible. Even the rich, oh, look, poor donkey. Let's help him out. But if it's a Negro, oh, fuck. And so, yeah, the rich have marginalized the world. They've marginalized all of us into some kind of soda drinker. And they want to sell us soda. You say that's some sort of power psychology. I say their desperation is quite obvious. Their dysfunctionality is quite obvious. They commit suicide. They get drunk. They go all the way around the world, all over the place, trying to get some kind of gratification, trying to find somebody who loves them for something besides their money. So I don't see them being in a position of power. I see them being in a position of desperation, and I see them completely owned by their addiction. They are addicted to their lifestyle. They are addicted to their pampering. They know they couldn't survive a day in the real environment. The real environment would kill them. They actually have to work. Oh my God. So, whatever you want to say, they're exercising power. No, they're acting out of desperation. They're silly addicts, way in over their heads. So anyway, so you asked me if I ever like any video ever, and I've seen a couple of your videos I thought were quite excellent. None lately, but yeah, you've made some great videos. I can't say that most of the world is thinking too goddamn straight, so yeah, the fact that whatever makes it to pop culture or makes it to our radar, they don't index the internet anymore, it's Google indexed. Certainly YouTube videos aren't indexed well, so yeah, it is rare to find somebody I'd say, gee, that's a smart guy, that's a guy saying smart things. Yeah, it's kind of rare. Is that my bad, or is that the world's bad? Anyway, all have their agenda. Well, again, if their agenda isn't in the conversation, I mean, I presume I'm going to be watching a video because some guy is going to be describing something philosophical or scientific. And if he's doing one of those two things, then I would think his agenda would be the truth. So, again, sorry, I just don't buy this argument that it's about agendas. It should be about what are the facts and what do they point to, and what's a fair analysis of these facts. And if that's not what the person's doing, I don't know how agenda should come into it. It really shouldn't be part of a video I would call a good video, should it? If somebody has an agenda besides the truth, should I be calling it a good video? Have to just get used to it or not. I mean, I have to get used to it. We're talking about whether the problem is solvable and how is it going to get solved. And it's not going to get, I think it is solvable overtly, and certainly. And whether it gets solved or not, it's just going to be dependent on some people doing something about it. So yes, I shouldn't get used to it. I should fight against it. I should do the right thing and try to be part of anything that's moving in that direction. If the wind can possibly blow in that direction, I should blow some more wind in that direction. So I'm going to blow some wind. Not greed, power. I just don't know where to go with this. Got car, did you feel rich? So he's talking about when I told the story about the fact that I bought a car when I was a kid. I was pretty rich, feeling pretty comfortable with myself, pretty good about myself. But the funny thing is, when I did buy the car, I mean, it was rolling around in the back of my head. And my father had given me a little bit of a funny look, like, this is kind of a silly, buy a durable car, don't be buying a new car. And so I did feel very indulgent. So I felt, frankly, I did feel a little guilty. I felt a little bit like I'm doing this out of ego. Okay, I was still a virgin, and I'm kind of calculating that maybe this will help get me laid. So that was part of the calculation for sure. And some part of me felt somewhat satisfied, but another part of me was saying, you know how much fucking money back then $4,500 was? I mean, just thinking about how many hours I had to work to make that money. So part of me was feeling a little bit, oh fuck, I have let go of something, that I might not have wanted to let go of, to lose. But it was a kick-ass car, and I have to admit I enjoyed every minute of my ownership of it. It was very, very good to me. We had many cigarettes together and played music, and many first kiss in that car, and it was damn good. Damn, best 6 hours I ever had. I mean, it really was. It was like 6 hours. Okay, let's say 4 hours. It was some kick-ass 4 hours. Anyway, not greed, power, the mega rich do not feel rich. Well, okay, you say so. I don't think there's any, again, I think they're so neurotic and dysfunctional that they probably don't feel anything reasonable or decent. Most of them are psychopaths, I pretty much think. I mean, if you can look at the world and know you have the power to fix all these dilemmas people are in, so many people in so much trouble over so little money, and you feel justified in squandering that money on crap, you have to be one motherfucking colossal idiot. If you can't think of better things to spend money on than $2 million birthday parties, you are one dumb motherfucker. Sickly dumb, sadistic motherfucker. That's the only word for it. Power? No, they're bloodlusty. Bloodlusty bastards. Anyway. And the sooner they drunk drive themselves into trees, the happier I'll be in their Maseratis. Okay, printing. This was really good. You find it comical that I would bring up printing the money, as if there's no distinction between the money leaving the Fed as cash and leaving the Fed as bank digits made by Morgan Stanley or something. And, you can say it's comical. Maybe we need to, I don't know if there's any point in us going through this more. I think there's a huge distinction between cash. I've explained that once cash is released into the environment, cash doesn't die. Okay, but digits die every day when the Federal Reserve does the exchange. The digits are converted into cash and they're disposed of. The checks are cashed by the Fed. They're not permanent. They're every day cycled into cash and exchanged as cash. And so to say it doesn't matter, the cash doesn't matter, well, I say it does matter. I say if a bank ends up with a huge liability because the stock market isn't performing, then they're going to need liquidity. And liquidity is defined as cash in their reserve accounts. And the only way banks can put cash in their reserve accounts is to get cash. They have to have cash to put cash in their reserve account. So I think you're really underappreciating that cash is different than a digit, and I don't think you really understand that the cash is permanent, digits are finite. Okay, all your own agenda. Yeah, I have to get, that's the wrong one. Digits. Okay, made a video explaining when cash is needed. Okay, well, cash is going to be needed if there is if all of a sudden the leverage starts falling apart, and people have to pay margins, or they have to sell an asset to pay for another asset. These are going to start pulling deposits out of banks. Okay, so if you have one of your debts falls through, one of the people that's supposed to be paying you, or a stock that was going to give you income, doesn't give you income, then you're going to have to pay for your property taxes on your summer home, and you're going to have to take the money out of your deposit account to pay your taxes. or something else. And when you take that money, once there was a failure, this money would have been there. Now it's not going to be there. It's going to go somewhere else. And so that's the point, that maybe that pack of digits isn't going to necessarily not come back to the banking system somewhere, but the original sack of digits is not coming back. The ones that were a bankruptcy or a failure or a diminishment in the value of your stock, those digits are not coming back. Okay, they're not going to get deposited somewhere else. All right, and as that keeps happening, it's going to keep extracting money from deposit accounts as people have to start selling more assets. And as they sell more assets, it's going to start creating more selling pressure. So I'm just saying this, just as it's a spiral up, it feeds on itself going up, it's going to feed on itself going down. And it will dry up deposits in banking institutions, and as those deposits dry up, the banking institutions are going to need cash in their reserve accounts, and they're going to if they have $4 trillion in those reserve accounts, they're going to start using them. And they're going to convert that money into cash, and the cash, like I said, once it's out in the economy, cash doesn't die. Alright, anyway, only way for people to lose equity and something. Anyway, a run's not the only way you can lose, that the people would take deposits out. Like I said, it's not just because they have a fear for the bank. It's that their own financial circumstances demand that they take their savings and spend them. So that's my argument. It's not so much they're going to run on the bank because they know the bank is going to default. They're going to run on the bank because they need the money to pay the bills. If you're unemployed, okay, you have less digits, and you're going to have to use up the digits you have. And to say that doesn't mean anything to the economy, I think, would be not reasonable. No, cat, not right now. Nick's cat doesn't get immediate attention. No, Nick's cat doesn't, so you don't. Come on, down here and I'll pet you. Okay. So she's talking about how we've gotten out of these previous downfalls in the stock market, and the stock market bounced back. But, we know what a dead cat bounce is, right? We've heard that phrase. Well, the guy in the other videos used that phrase. So let's not pretend even dead cats bounce, right? So, to say it bounced right back, it didn't bounce right back. We now have 0 interest rates and $4 trillion in a reserve account, plus no answer to the debt problem, and no foreseeable future answer. So don't pretend. I think it's a terrible pretense for you to say. And we have this contraction of business investment. These are all signs that things aren't the same as they were before that dead cat bounced. So you're saying that every crash is going to be the same, and every time we're going to be just as strong, and everything's just going to bounce back. The dead cat will just keep bouncing down the road like a super ball. No. There's going to be look, the stock market, when it crashed, there was lots of signs that it was wobbling and going to crash. It was doing mini crashes, and then it did the big crash. And, the fact that we're going to do it cyclically, and maybe we'll do it over a 3-year period, or a 5-year period, or a 10-year period versus a, 2-year period, doesn't change the fact that it's looking like a dead cat bouncing. And there's going to be and it ain't going to bounce anymore. It's just going to end up rotting in the sewer for 10 years. But again, he just keeps implying like there's, he uses the last 2 recessions as evidence that, it's no worries, even if it falls, it'll get right back up and walk away. It didn't do that in the Great Depression. If we didn't have World War II, the Great Depression might have lasted 30 years. So, I find these weak arguments to say as if they're true, and I must accept them because you know it and you said it. Okay, Nick says so. Well, I'll write that down in my notebook. Nick says so. It does mean something to me, to tell you the truth, but I don't know if it means enough. So we talked about E-Trade accounts not going to 0. It doesn't matter whether they're going to 0 or not. My point, again, wasn't that the banks are going to fail. My point is the people holding equity are going to fail. they're going to have margin problems, they're going to have leverage problems, and those problems are going to, once the thing starts falling, it'll reach a critical mass quite quickly because it's all radioactive material. Most of these assets are radioactive assets, and this stuff will go fissionable pretty quickly. So again, down to zero. Where did I argue that the rich are going to be driven down to zero? It's not about zero. The point is it's going to be down a lot. And a lot of equity is going to be lost, and in the chaos of that loss, there's going to be even less investment because everybody's going to be trying to figure out what they own and what they don't own and how to make what they own work. And they're going to be so distracted in their personal lives that no one's going to be engineering a social infrastructure. At the worst of times, very soon bounce back. Yes, that's what he said. At the worst of times, oh yeah, just come back. It came back. It came back. Yeah, he kept saying, yeah. So he keeps saying digits don't die. Again, I think they do die in the Fed. I think that's the whole point of the Fed and the exchange of the reserve cash. So the digits do die. They're converted to cash. The transactions are made and the check is cashed. That's the death of the digit. It becomes a new mechanism. It certainly becomes a new mechanism when the Fed makes that cash exchange that requires the bank to produce cash. So if a bank is low on cash in its reserves and it has a few extra billion of liability come in to other banks, it has to pay it in cash, which means it has to extract cash from the economy to pay those bills. So to say that cash doesn't matter, I think, is just fundamentally wrong. It's a fundamentally misunderstanding what happens at the Fed and understanding the significance of what happens at the Fed. All right, so he says there's no crisis, and then later he says, well, yeah, there's a crisis of capitalism, but it's not a crisis, it's only a crisis. It's not a double crisis. Digits will be there, even if the whole thing, 90% this and falls that, all the digits are there somehow. No concession that the digits are not written on real stuff. They're written on fantasy future products that have never been even made. They're still on drawing tables. That's what's being sold is invisible. Invisible pie from the future is being mixed with the pie of the past, and they're saying all the pieces are good. Well, no, the invisible pieces of the future are not good in a crisis, and they're certainly not good in a world where we didn't anticipate, like, oh, well, there's $4, $5, $6 gasoline. Well, all of a sudden, that future pie isn't going to exist, and it's not going to be able to pay its bills. All right, we're getting there. Running down the side of the page now. Damn it. Caps nessus do own. Yeah, I don't know what that means. Good reason I don't know. Do own. Yeah, my pen sometimes fails to write correctly. Major problem. So yeah, the crisis of capitalism in the sense that the capitalists are not going to invest in a world where they can't make profit. And again, I think critical to this argument is recognition that they can't make profit off the poor. They can't lend the poor money reliably because they can't pay it back. And the poor can't pay any price for something. They have nothing else to sacrifice. They can't do any robbing of Peter to pay Paul because Peter's just as poor as Paul. So it just, they need a middle class or a luxury class, a disposable income class, and that class is the one class that's been diminished the most over the last 40 years. And that's a really significant fact. Can't deal with it. I don't know what that means. Super rich, feel power. Yeah, well, who cares? I don't understand that argument at all. Demand cash. Yeah, so again, he wants me to point out where this demand for cash would be. My point would be is that the Fed will demand cash. You'll have to have it in your reserve account. You'll have to get it from the real world. And that's going to be significantly difficult, and it's certainly going to put a premium on cash. If you're a bank and you need $500 million or $500 billion in cash to put in your reserve account, well, then you're going to need the other bank to have the cash for you to get it from the other bank, right? So to settle your debts or settle whatever you need to settle. But I mean, those are cash accounts, and you keep talking as if banks can put digits in those reserve accounts. They cannot put digits in those reserve accounts. They have to refeed them with cash. And if they're losing money in the regular economy, okay, they're not going to have any money going into their reserve accounts. They're going to have money coming out of their reserve accounts for tax dollars and all this other stuff. So they're going to have a net loss in their reserve accounts because they're going to be more of the checks getting cycled through their system are going to be checks to the U.S. Treasury, which is money and cash they will not get back to their bank. Their bank will not receive that money back as cash. It will not go into the reserve account as cash because it will get paid to the federal Treasury. So again, these you're just pretending that they're that the Fed isn't, that you're pretending that reserve digits are the same thing as actual physical cash, and you're pretending that actual physical cash doesn't play a role in the banking system when actual physical cash is the only thing banks can put into their reserve account if they need to. And I'm saying when they have a liquidity crisis, they're going to need every piece of cash they have to maintain those reserve accounts. And so they're going to try to extract the money that's in those reserve accounts into cash because they hold the liability. They hold the liability for the buying of the Treasury. They paid in bank digits, and those bank digits are going to demand cash in the Federal Reserve when they go to the reserve system. All right, that's probably enough. Anyway, nice talking to you, and till the next time and such.